mistletoe is hung where you can see. Somebody waits for you. Kiss her once for me. Have a holly jolly Christmas. And in case you didn't hear, oh by golly, have a holly jolly Christmas this year.
Don't want a lot for Christmas. There is just one thing I need. I don't care about the presents underneath the Christmas tree. I just want you for my own, more than you could ever know. Make my wish come true. All I want for Christmas is you. Yeah. I don't want a lot for Christmas. There is just one thing I need. Don't care about the presents underneath the Christmas tree. I don't need to hang my stocking there upon the fireplace. Santa Claus will make me happy with a toy on Christmas Day. I just want you for my own, more than you could ever know. Make my wish come true. All I want for Christmas is you. You, baby. Oh, I won't ask for much this Christmas. I won't even wish for snow. I'm just gonna keep on waiting underneath the mistletoe. I will make a list and send it to the North Pole for Saint Nick. I won't even stay awake to hear those magic reindeer play. 'Cause I just want you here tonight, holding on to me so tight. What more can I do? Oh baby, all I want for Christmas is you. You, baby. Oh, all the lights are shining so brightly everywhere. And the sound of children's laughter fills the air. And everyone is singing. I hear those sleigh bells ringing. Santa, won't you bring me the one I really need? Won't you please bring my baby to me? Oh, I don't want a lot for Christmas. This is all I'm asking for. I just wanna see my baby standing right outside my door. Oh, I just want you for my own, more than you could ever know. Make my wish come true. Oh, baby, all I want for
I'd like to call to order the Charter Township of Chesterfield regular township board meeting for Tuesday, December 20th, 2022 at 7 p.m. to order. We all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Clerk Barry, could you call the roll? And as a side note, Trustee Demink is asked to be excused today for a medical procedure.
Supervisor Kersten.
Here.
Treasurer Elliott.
Here.
Trustee Anderson.
Here.
Trustee Joseph. Here. Trustee Vosberg.
Here.
Clerk Berry is here.
Item 4, approval of agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Clerk Berry, supported by Supervisor Kersten. Clerk Berry, would you call the roll?
Clerk Berry, aye. Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Item 5, presentations. There are none scheduled tonight. Item 6 is department reports. I'll start with the Board of Trustees. Clerk Berry, go ahead.
I just have one very brief one, Mr. Supervisor, and that is to let the board and the public know that the State Board of Canvassers will be meeting tomorrow to certify the recount as well as the election, as well as the ensuing recount that occurred statewide. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? Treasurer Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just two quick comments. First, we have implemented a purchasing card program this year, and we are happy to report that so far that has generated, it's at $27,000, over $27,000 in revenue for the general fund. And then the other part is the offices will be closed, the township offices will be closed the week between Christmas and New Year's. And any tax or water payments can be made online at First State Bank, or you can put them in the Dropbox. There will be people here the 28th and 29th to pull those items out of the Dropbox and process them on your behalf. If you have any questions, feel free to call the offices here. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the trustees? Director Sonnenberg, do you want to make a quick update on the Sparks Grant application?
Yes, thank you. So at our last meeting, we're going to go through a couple slides just to kind of give everybody an update on how we applied and what we applied for, just a little bit more details real quick. You saw this slide at our last meeting. Just to kind of give you a quick overview for those who didn't, there's 3 areas that we focus on. This is Pollard Park. The 3 areas are up to the north. We wanted to add what we call Trails and Trees, which is a walkway over the Salt River. And then that middle section is ADA access provided to our ball fields, our restrooms, and our concession stand. And the lower area is an ADA playscape that we're putting in. If you want to go to the next slide, I'll just give you a quick overview. So the thing at Pollard is, it's a great sports complex, but what we noticed during COVID is we really had to provide access for other people. So by doing that, what we tried to do is this area here that's shown up in that north area, that north circle on that first map, is where the Salt River almost touches the baseball fields. And you can see in that top right picture, it's hard to make out, but there's about a 14-foot drop from our existing trail. And then that bottom picture is actually what the river looks like in the winter. It's a really, really cool area. It's just hard for anybody to get out there. So if you'll go to the next slide, please, Karen. It's hard to tell, but what we designed was a walkway kind of higher up that's ADA compliant, really accessible for all, will get us out over the river and then down to a new trail system, which is incorporating our Salt River Greenway Trail. Pollard Park is about 114 acres, and we use about 40 of it. So this would provide access to those additional property. Also, New Haven was excited about this because the trail that we would put in would go towards New Haven, and they would have access to the park as well through trails. Next slide, please, Karen. This, once again, I apologize, smaller pictures, but in the middle you'll see our existing dugouts, and the lower portion shows that the dugouts that we propose to get funding for. It's just a nice, clean ADA bleachers, clean access to our fields for those that have trouble getting in and out. It just makes things a little bit easier. Next slide, Karen. And finally, new playscape. We had removed a playscape that we took from Selfridge years ago that they installed Pollard, and the foundations and stuff were getting bad, so it didn't pass our safety test. So we removed it, and our plan is, if we get this grant, is to install a new playscape, similar to the one they have in New Baltimore, is kind of the similar design, if you've seen that one out at Mary Burke Park. So that is our application that we put in yesterday for the Spark Grant. The total is about $1 million. They're giving away $15 million, and we're really hopeful. We worked really hard to kind of check all the boxes. We'll keep you updated on where it goes from here.
Thank you, Josh. Real quick, the Sparks Grant is through the Department of Natural Resources through the state of Michigan, and it is $15 million that they have made available to local communities, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Item 7, the consent agenda.
All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of these items. If discussion of any item is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Public comments on the consent agenda items are permitted. A, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of December 13th, 2022, and B, approval of the payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Vosberg, supported by Treasurer Elliott? I'm sorry, Clerk Berry? Supported by Clerk Berry. Comments from the public?
John Speaka, 53978 Connor Drive. Couple questions on the bill run. I noticed under Human Resources, there were a couple labor posters that were bought at $174.16. And my question is, I hope those posters are put to where the employees have access and can see them. I've come in this township many times, and I've never seen them posted up, so. I also noticed under the supervisor's office that there were holiday cards that were purchased at $152.80. And I know at $152.80 that the holiday cards couldn't have been enough for all the residents. So I know you weren't sending them out to the residents. So I was just wondering, at $152.80, I mean, if they were being sent out to your donors, they should be sent out to the residents. Under Parks and Rec, I noticed that there was a $727.99 charge for a double star. When I parked my vehicle tonight, I didn't see the star out there, so I was just wondering if that star was stolen or where it went. I know a couple weeks ago when we had the tree lighting, I noticed it up there, but it's gone. So if I could get an update on that, I would appreciate it. Under Human Resources, it looks like Mr. Duchesne ordered a supervisor's guy to the township governing, so I would think that that charge, the supervisor would require that manual. Under Facilities and Operations, Jeremy Jack got reimbursement for a mechanical certification. We go round and round on this. He got hired in to do fleet. He's now paid to make decisions on where to send our vehicles to be fixed, and we're paying for a certificate. So I'm a little confused why we're reimbursing him on a certificate when he doesn't work on cars. For example, that is, there was a charge, with Bell Tire at $78.48 for a simple oil change. And then also under that, Frost and Craig Plumbing did some sink modifications at $3,962 in our new building over there. And it's a 3-year lease, so I'm just wondering, and we need to be careful how much money we actually pour into this because it's only a 3-year lease, and I don't want to get stuck with pouring too much money into it. Under Parks and Recs, I noticed that finally the cabin got fixed at $11,500. Just wondering why it was charged to Parks and Recs. And then a 22 Ford Escape at $462 on a lease, I thought was way out of whack. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? Any further comments from the public? I have a motion by Trustee Vosberg, supported by Clerk Berry, to approve the consent agenda as presented. Clerk Berry?
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 8A, the regular agenda.
Item 8A is to approve the request by the Treasurer's Office to adopt Resolution Number 2022-39 and collect 100% of the L'Anse Creuse School District 2023 tax levy in the summer.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Clerk
Support.
Berry, supported by trustee Vosberg.
Treasurer Elliott.
Treasurer Elliott, I'm sorry. Treasurer Elliott, you want to address this? This is common to what we had last week.
Yep, it's just a regular thing that we have to do every year, is get the resolution and send it off to the school districts, and all the others had come in. For the last board meeting, L'Anse Creuse sent their letter the day after, so we're just doing this. It's normal.
Thank you, ma'am. Any comments from the public? Any comments from the board? I have a motion by Clerk Berry, supported by Treasurer Elliott, to approve item 8A. Clerk Berry?
Clerk Berry, aye. Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye. Item 8B.
Item 8B is to approve a recommendation by Parks and Recreation Department to approve the 2023 through 2027 Chesterfield Township Parks and Recreation Master Plan 2022 update.
Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Treasurer Elliott, supported by trustee Vosberg. Mr. Sonnenberg, Director Van Isen's not here today due to an illness, so please.
Yes,
Floor
thank
is
you.
yours.
And Representative from Giffords was going to try to make it, and they couldn't be here as well, so they're stuck with me, sorry. So as a requirement for most, if not all of our grants, Parks and Rec Master Plan is a critical component to getting and securing any kind of grant. It also aligns kind of everyone's thinking into one document. So as part of this requirement, we have to have a public hearing and provide some of the updates and changes that were done to the Parks and Rec Master Plan. These overall are pretty simple. I'm going to go through, there's about 17 pages, but I'm just going to give you a quick rundown. Overall, it's pretty simple. One of the things that we wanted to make sure we incorporated into this update was our Salt River Greenway Plan, because there's going to be a lot of funding available for that, so we wanted to make sure we included that and a couple other things, the lagoon property, a few other things. But the gist of this is really to kind of give us the ability to apply for these grants as they come due. So first, let me just kind of run through slide by slide, and I'll be happy to take any questions and get any feedback. Why a Park and Rec Master Plan? Identify existing parks, natural features, recreation facilities. It allows the community to share their interests and needs regarding recreation. Helps plan for the future based on population and existing facilities. Provides support for future grant possibilities. Next slide, Karen, thank you. This was the scope of our master plan. Obviously, we have a project kickoff, and then we developed the recreation plan per the DNR specifications. We gathered public input and finalized the plan, which we've brought here today. The required sections of this plan to meet the DNR requirements are community description, administration structure, inventory of existing parks, natural areas, recreation facilities, resource inventory, description of the planning and public input process, goals and objectives, and an action plan. So during this process, we had a project kickoff, which was a Parks and Rec meeting with the chairperson. We had a meeting with the director of Parks and Rec, the township supervisor, other staff, and officials selected by the township. Some of the tasks that were involved in this were review the scope of work, obtain the required information, establish meeting dates with the Parks and Rec Commission. Plan development. Community descriptions were updated, administrative structure was updated, inventory of existing parks, natural resource and recreational facilities were updated, resource inventory was updated, description of planning and public input process was updated, goals and objectives were updated, and action plans. Inventory of existing parks, natural areas, and recreation facilities. This is kind of an updated list to add to our existing list. Some of the things that were added were Connie Bowles Park, the historic village, the lagoon property, Radio Range, Salt River Nature Preserve, Sugar Bush Building, and Weber Paddle Park. Also, a big part of this was going back to our earlier presentation about accessibility. The big issue we have with any of our parcels is accessibility. It's hard for people to get in and out freely into some of our facilities and some of our parks. That's one of the big things that we're going to be working on in the future. An obvious example of this is as we add the lagoon property into our inventory, it's obvious that property is just a vacant land, so there's not, accessibility is kind of none. So that just kind of shows you how they break down this form, shows you how they rank accessibility, and obviously, there's certain pieces of property that we won't focus on, and there's certain pieces of property that we will. So if you'll go to the next one. Inventory of existing parks, natural areas, recreation facilities updated. So the township has been successful in grant applications in the past and is required to list them in this document. So this is just basically a list of all of our current and upcoming grants. Next page, Karen. Goals and objectives updated. This is really just to align our goals, make them more current. All we really did is we took a survey and we added some of that survey information. In the past, we had approximately, I think last count was 411 people took a survey, and the last one was 64. We combined all that information and we added some of the interesting things that came about were like additional pathways in certain areas. We added those, and we added a few other little things, but they mostly aligned with our goals from the last Parks and Rec Master Plan. Sorry, next slide. Sorry, it's just a lot of information. I'm just trying to summarize it. Action strategies updated. All parks, pavilions, restrooms, picnic area, upgraded lighting, benches and sunshades, additional ADA playgrounds, explore acquisition opportunities, indoor recreation, drainage improvements on ball fields, connected parks via water trail, Lake St. Clair, connected walking path along the Salt River Corridor. And our action strategies updated were Brandenburg Park, electronic sign, band shelter or staging area, funding and construction plan, pier renovation and improvement plan, township municipal office, and veterans memorial area. Identify future improvements and determine feasibility of a maintenance plan. Next page, thank you, Karen. Action strategies were also updated. Senior center, explore operations for joint center and additional programming. The lagoon property, discuss plans for a nature preserve, walking path, green space, and passive recreation. Pathways, continue to coordinate effort to enhance non-motorized pathways. Public input. So like I said earlier, we had, I think I said 64, I'm sorry, it was 68. The last round of surveys that we did, we had 68 responses, and the majority of them, if not all of them, were pretty much the same thing. The real big push was for accessibility and pathways. So that brings us to where we are now in the process, which is this public hearing. And we want to have the opportunity, if anybody has any questions, or if anybody has any comments on the plan before we finalize it. Next slide, Karen. We're prepared to submit this plan to the DNR by February 1st. So we'll incorporate any comments in that time and then submit it. And then we'll use this plan to apply for grants the next 5 years. Any questions?
Thank you, sir. I'll open it up to the board. Trustee Joseph?
I have like several, but I'll just start with the org chart. I understand, and he was mentioned as not being here tonight, and that was Ms. Vanderson, right? I said he, I meant she, sorry, because we have, in addition, Matthew Carr. Can you hear me okay, Hank? Okay. I didn't know, Mr. Sonnenberg, that you had taken over the department. That was a surprise to me. I just saw it on the org chart. And I know from like just an operational standpoint, like you're busy. And as the facilities and operations director, how do you have the time to take over leisure services? So when did that happen?
I can answer that.
Okay.
So Michelle Vanderson was off on a maternity leave when all of these transitions began to take place.
Okay,
We weren't sure when she was coming back, and the next logic, based on the condition of the environment of several parks, that facilities was already running it.
Sure.
So we put, by my decision, to put Josh in charge of it, in the hopes that when Michelle came back, and again, maternity leave, we didn't know exactly when she was gonna come back. She came back while all of this was being in place. So as of now, we've left that relationship in place. I don't know if that's the long-term solution that we will eventually migrate away from and put Michelle back in charge of it. She's performed excellent and above our expectations. But that mesh between what she needs in her job and then what we need in the field, particularly ball diamonds, off-site parks, that coordination has worked so well with the two of them that that's kind of where we're in that status quo state right now, just because it's working so well.
I understand. I know that a big chunk of leisure services of late has been, you know, assets and property and managing all of those. So it's a natural fit. My difficulty is in a personnel org chart, it appears that there's two positions. Like we have a director of leisure services or the person that heads it up who is, she doesn't get demoted because she went on maternity leave. Like she's now listed in the org chart as the assistant director of parks, and that Mr. Sonnenberg is the director of leisure services. So I was a little confused about, you know, the org chart reflects one position as the director of leisure services, and
Again, when we started this, Michelle was off on, so we needed someone capable with the knowledge of the facilities to kind of fill that vacuum while she was gone.
no, I guess maybe I'm not explaining it. If she's off on maternity, then she can't be the assistant director either. She appears in the org chart as the assistant director, reporting to Mr. Sonnenberg as the leisure services director. His position, as I understand it, is interim, and he is just filling in for her. But in the org chart, she reports to him, and I'm confused by that because she doesn't lose her job on maternity. She wouldn't naturally appear back on the org chart if she's not capable of doing that job. Sorry? There's some other board members that had comments, and I didn't understand what they wanted to say.
Director DeShane, go ahead.
Let me help out a little bit. So the way the management labor agreement works is there's a director of Parks and Recreation, or previously it was called Director of Parks and Recreation, became Leisure Services. That position became vacant. Michelle Vanderson, and this is about as far as I'm going to talk about leaves or medical or anything else, she was always the assistant. That didn't change. In fact, title was coordinator, and she was never director of Parks and Recreation. As the supervisor said, during that situation where the leisure services director, or AKA the Parks and Recreation director, left us in short notice, the assistant was then on a leave. So the logical, picking it up there, if that helps, the logic that the supervisor said is Mr. Sonnenberg was placed in that role to assist oversight of that department, and he's in the transition back, or I'm sorry, bad throat tonight, that's why I'm sitting in the back. That's why she's in the position of Assistant Parks and Recreation Director, was and is, and that continuation is on with him filling a different role, which is vacant technically at this point, as a Director of Leisure Services.
We have no director of leisure services. We have Mr. Sonnenberg filling in as the
acting
interim.
in that capacity, yes.
Are we hiring a director of leisure services?
No decision's been made on that at this time, sir.
So we have a department with no director, and we have the facilities and operation guy managing the entire leisure services, which would be seniors.
Absolutely well, yes, yeah. In fact, the synergy that you would generally have.
Okay, I'm good. I don't need synergy talk, but I'm good. Thank you.
Don't you want a little synergy?
No, I do, but not in this instance,
Okay.
because I don't understand how we just change titles and somebody's out on leave and the org chart is pretty clear, and there's no interim titles anywhere. And so if there's no director of leisure services and you say there's an interim, but we're not sure if we're going to fill the position, then you don't list it in the master plan, which is a 5-year minimum document. So it's confusing, but I'm going to lay it down because it's not my job to run day-to-day operations. But I don't know how many more departments you can have, like the engineer becomes the DPW director and all of this. But that's separate, and I'll lay it down. Whatever works for you works for me.
Okay, thank you.
The lagoon property and the historic village are now part of the master plan. And I'm not sure who wants to field this, but we've seen and we've talked from the things that break down in the historic village create potential risk. And we heard from the township attorney regarding the liability. And so we were left with a decision to either put in a fairly expensive new floor or close the building to public traffic because we had safety concerns. How many more buildings can we, or properties can we move into leisure services, particularly on the Parks and Rec side, and now it's in the master plan? Every vacant piece of land in the township is not Parks and Rec. When did the lagoon property become part of the portfolio of Parks and Rec assets? And when did we decide to move the historic village now in, and as such, you know, will those expenses for maintenance also be coming out of the general fund? Because from the depletion of the revenue to appropriations that's on page 43 of our packet, we're closing in on $900K with no revenue. So how much can we continue to absorb on the Parks and Rec or Leisure Services side in your estimation?
So first we'll start with Lagoon property. Lagoon property obviously is in our portfolio. We've had it for quite some time. And if there's any opportunity in the next 5 years to put a pathway or any interconnecting grant with funding, it has to be in the plan. So it could sit dormant like it does now, but if it pops up and there's an opportunity, if the residents come to planning in the future and they're like, hey, we would like to see a path going from Hennings to Cotton, we would have that ability to get grant funding because it's in our plan.
Okay, but I guess my distinction was sometimes things show up in the master plan and then maybe there is no grant funding and we say, well, this was part of our master plan. You approved the master plan. Why wouldn't you approve a pathway for $300,000? And I say, well, I was told that there would be grant money potentially, and so it was imperative as a precursor to the grant application, not an indication that we were committed to pathways and all the things. So in a lot of ways, it's fair to say that the lagoon property is included in the portfolio with potentially a wish list, and should that wish list be realized by way of grants, we're in a better position to apply for that grant. It's not an indication that this board will receive a bid packet for an engineer on a pathway, and then we say, well, what's this? And you go, well, it was part of your master plan that you approved. It's the other way, right?
Correct, well said.
correct.
Yes,
Right?
correct. We would not move forward with anything if we did a pathway like that. There would be planning involved, and it would be years down the road in our capital plan. This is just to open it up to, there's a lot of money, $65 million
Sure,
in
yeah.
grant funding, and the only way you can capitalize that is get some of those property in the plan. You might wake up a year from now and decide, hey, there's a grant to put a dog park in over there. If it's not in the plan, we can't do it. So it just helps us in the future.
Last question, and
Yes.
this is an area where the facilities and operations guy lending a hand to the leisure services team is very beneficial. When you first came aboard, that position that you hold was not part of our portfolio. Like, that wasn't part of our personnel. And you were tasked with, and you did a very nice job of inventorying all the township buildings and assets, and gave some insight to the board on things that had been neglected, truthfully, and the cost associated with that. Have you been able to drill down at all on the historic village in terms of each building or just in general, the landscape? And do you have an idea of potential costs and liabilities that the township board would be needing to look at in the coming years?
Great question. We're in the process of doing an in-house engineering study that you do typically, rating risk and doing a cost analysis for years to come on that facility, also our youth center. Anything that's over so many years old, we're going to provide some documentation where you can kind of see what we determine to be those long-term costs and any risk, stuff that we would identify and get fixed. Now that that fell into our portfolio, that is absolutely the plan moving forward.
Perfect, thank you.
So I would like to say one additional thing when it comes to tying Parks and Rec together. There is some advantages with our two departments together. For example, we get to reach in, our facility side is lean and mean, and we get to reach out to some of that Parks and Rec staff. When we're at Brandenburg Park and there's Parks and Rec staff involved, now we can tie those two departments together. So we have, it is a little bit extra work, but I do appreciate the opportunity because we have found a lot of synergy between the two departments.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. Any comments from the public? Any further comments from the public? Bring it back up to the board. Clerk Barry.
Thank you. Josh, I was looking through the update that you presented to us, and I saw that we're including sunshades in a lot of our public parks, which is good because that's often been a challenge for people to enjoy the park because where we have canopied trees in a lot of areas, there's a whole lot of open space where you don't have that. So I was glad to see that. I'd like to suggest that perhaps we consider some sunshade at Historic Village as well. It's not currently in the plan, but the reason why I say that we may want to suggest that is that we have that large open area where people often gather and congregate when we have public events there, and there is no shade. And many of those folks are also seniors. And so if we can provide, I think, maybe or just some area somewhere where they can get some shade because of that large open area, just a consideration there at Historic Village. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? Comments from the board? Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. I see the value in our parks in it. I brought this up the last couple of weeks. It's how we're funding them out of the general fund. A line item of 68 online responses predicates a park. I remember a few years ago, 400 positive responses was all that needed to support the purchase of the our 30-plus acre nature center, whatever that's costing us now. I do see, I mentioned before, I do at some point, instead of chopping into our general fund, because we're going to own these things forever, I really see a need that there should be consideration of a separate millage to maintain the township's funds, or to fund our township parks. This master plan, I'll support it because I like a couple things on the cover. Does this require any expenditure of funds? No. Are staff or other resources required? No. That's what I see today. Now, we'll wait and see what happens as it fleshes out. Thank you.
Thank you. Treasurer Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I saw that the grants, the plans for the grants was in that. How often does that have to be updated? Is it okay that it's now and then 3 or 4 years down the road? Will this have to be updated with grants that we get, saying, if we did get the grants that we're applying for this year?
Yes, so what's really nice is on the DNR website, they have a dashboard that we subscribe to that actually has a running total. Even now that we applied for the Spark grant, that's in there as well. So, yeah, we will be updating this. It's kind of part of the requirement moving forward, absolutely.
Thank you. Just a couple comments in reply to Trustee Joseph, Trustee Anderson. You're both correct. We aren't there yet, and I'll acknowledge that. This is just another step in that direction. The funding mechanism and stream absolutely has to be looked at, whether it's a separate millage, whether it's a Parks and Rec proposal to the general public. That is definitely something we need to take a look at. As I said in my initial statement years ago, we have over 500 acres of township property, most of it unused, inaccessible, and I think there's a benefit to creating some sort of plan. And in order to get those grants, which is what we are, the big initiative we're trying to take, is particularly with the Sparks grant, is to come up with a plan and come up with an organizational attack for making these requests for these grants. So I acknowledge we're not there yet. We have a long way to go. There's a lot of work left to be done. But this is the first phase of getting it out there, both with an update, and I think we've got a lot of work left to do. So with that being said, I acknowledge your comments and willing to do whatever we have to do to finalize this Parks and Rec plan and get into a position where we're all very comfortable with it. With that being said, any further comments from the board? I have a motion by Treasurer Elliott, supported by Trustee Vosberg, to approve item 8B. Clerk Barry?
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
Item 8C.
Item 8C is to approve a recommendation by Supervisor Kersten to reappoint Michelle Wilson Merriweather to the Parks and Recreation Commission with a term ending June 1st, 2025.
I will make that motion to appoint,
Support?
supported by Clerk Barry. Unfortunately, Ms. Merriweather, again, is feeling under the weather tonight. She called me briefly. She appreciated the opportunity, although she could not make it tonight. With that being said, any conversation, any comments from the board? Trustee Joseph?
Mr. Supervisor, I cannot express to you strongly enough my disappointment at this nomination, and I will be voting no. I think it's important for everybody who serves on a board in this township to support the entire township. And while it's true that we can have differences of opinion, referring to board members as racist or disparaging the police department is completely unacceptable. And I don't think it's right. I won't go into the long list of specifics on this particular case because the candidate is not here. And I find that to be maybe disrespectful to go into a lengthy list, but I am disappointed that the comments that were made in the past over other issues were not, in my opinion, satisfactorily resolved. There was some very hurtful things said as it relates to the police officers in this community. And again, I won't go too deep into the list other than to say I am a very firm no on this particular candidate. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any further comments from the board? Any comments from the public? Seeing no comments from the public, I have a motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Clerk Barry, to approve the recommendation for item 8C. Clerk Barry?
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
No.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Item 8D.
Item 8D is to receive and file that on January 3rd, 2023, Chesterfield Township will list for sale the former Department of Public Works site located at 50177 Gratiot Avenue via Macomb Daily, Cranes, the Voice newspaper, Facebook, Chesterfield Township's website, and a sign on the property. The township website will have a link for the bid instructions and package. The bid package, properly labeled, must be received by the township clerk by 12 p.m. on February 3rd, 2023. The bid opening is scheduled for February 13th, 2023 at 12 p.m. in the boardroom located at the township office. The township board will consider all bids submitted at its regular meeting on February 14th, 2023.
Do I have a motion to approve to receive and file the documents presented? So moved. Trustee Joseph, supported by Supervisor Kersten. Comments from the public? Comments from the board? Trustee Joseph.
Just wanted to thank the township attorney and the township attorney's office. I know Attorney Anderson and Siebert have worked on this. It's been a fairly difficult project to get finalized because of so many entanglements with regard to encroachments and environmental issues. We had some, for those of you that recall, the old DPW grounds right on Gratiot had gas tanks on the property, and the underground tanks required removal, and then the soil had to be, there was a remediation process with the soil, and that all has to be filed with the, back when we started, it was DEQ and now Eagle, And those records, but it was just a very long process, and the attorney's done a very great job, excellent job in making sure that we can go to bid with a clear title and no encumbrance of any sort. So thank you, and I appreciate all the effort that was done to get this project to the board.
You're welcome. And Attorney Siebert, obviously, I echo your sentiment. A lot of time, a lot of effort spent to make sure that we're doing this right. What I do want to point out is the board retains the right to accept the bids, and if they don't like what comes in and they choose to reject them, the majority chooses to reject them, it goes right back out on the mark again, and the board controls the sale of this property. So, any further comments from the board? Any comments from the public? I have a motion by Trustee Joseph, supported by Supervisor Kersten, to approve item 9D as presented. Clerk Berry.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Item 8E.
Item 8E is to approve a recommendation to re-enter into a one-year agreement for contractual services with Mad Habit Creative LLC for media project services from January 1st, 2023 through December 31st, 2023 at an amount not to exceed $19,800.
Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to approve.
Second.
Clerk Berry will support. Assistant Garvey, would you want to address this in front of our?
Yes, so we entered into a contract last year, was our first year with Mad Habit. They did an excellent job. They run our recording for our board meetings. They attend all of our events and give us photos and videos. They also help with graphics. They've done a couple filmings for us. And you'll see on their invoice, they do break everything down, and they have not increased their prices from the previous year. And we've had them at every event, and everyone has said wonderful things about this vendor. So, any questions?
Any questions from the board? Clerk Berry?
Thank you. I'm very happy to support this item. Since we do not have a media department here at the township yet, and we may in the future as we continue to grow and have a need for media services. However, I've worked with many media in the past, and this vendor, I agree, is a very capable vendor. They've done some very, they've come up with some creative solutions to media issues or project problems that we have had, and I'm happy to support them and have them on for another year. The only thing I would like to ask is that in the notes you'll see in our packet that it includes 6 hours of media services for $1,000 a month, and that monthly hours do not roll over, which means that any hours that aren't used under some miracle here, if we don't use them here, if we don't use those hours, obviously those are hours that are going to need to get used in that month so we don't lose them. And I would just like to ask that all elected officials be informed, or all the department heads let them know if there's excess hours that we can use. I know certainly in the clerk's office we always have updates that need to be done, and that may be something that we will need, would like to utilize, and I think other departments as well may have that need. So if we can just make that available and known at some point during the month, Karen, that would be terrific.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Just so you guys know that we did use all the hours this year, and even some additional hours that we didn't even get charged for. So they've been really great to us. I did want to add that I did forget that some of these videos have been helping with Macomb, sending them to Macomb County Economic Development as well. So, in the future, that could potentially capture the attention of some businesses that are coming into the state and the county. So, it's been really great.
Thank you, Karen. Any comments from the public? I'll just bring it back up here. This group has been great to work for. They have raised our electronic profile immensely. No disrespect to the previous operators of our board meeting. But what they've brought to this board meeting and putting it out, pushing it out to the public in electronic profile has been absolutely wonderful for the community. And what we do now is on a lot of our grant, when we make these videos, we attach the links to packages. Again, we had a group that comes from Macomb Economic Development. We give them the package, we give them a link now with all these videos that we've created with them. So great organization, they're great partners with us. And with that being said, I have a motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Clerk Berry, to approve item 8E as presented. Clerk Berry?
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Item 8F.
8F is to approve a recommendation for the Township Board to approve the purchase of a 2022 Ford F-350 regular cab pickup truck with snowplow at $83,950 and a 2022 Ford F-350 Super Cab pickup truck with snowplow at $86,545 through Russ Milne Ford.
Supervisor Kersten will make a motion to approve this request. Supported by Treasurer Elliott. Trustee Vosberg? I'm sorry, Trustee Vosberg. Comments from the board? Seeing no comments from the board?
Just
Oh,
quickly.
Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, I noticed in your executive summary, Mr. Supervisor, that I know you were very big on the lease when we can. That makes sense in most of our vehicles. And when we had the lease presentation, we were advised that not all township vehicle needs could be covered on a lease. And this vehicle is apparently one of those, and I do appreciate that you did include in the executive packet a comparison to the lease option, which, again, was something that you were kind of brought over from the police department, that when there's an opportunity to lease vehicles, they typically save money, but you have to do a cost-benefit analysis on the type of vehicle. And in this case, we have an F-350, which is not typically a vehicle that is generally leased, and so the comparison and the cost savings by purchasing is much appreciated. I think for those that aren't familiar with the packet, the estimated overall cost through a lease would be $230,000. So I appreciate that comparison before bringing it to the board.
Thank you. And just a side note, we're dealing like with every other municipality. There's a pipeline issue for specific type, styles, and trucks with modifications. And this is, we'll continue down that road with the current vendor that gave the presentation. Unfortunately, they're having difficulty getting vehicles just like we are. So this is something I felt important. And get it in front of the board, get the vehicles here, because they are key vehicles and tools for the township, for our employees, so. Comments from the public? Clerk Berry? Yeah. Clerk Berry, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, that's okay. Just wanted to clarify for the board and public who may be watching as well. In our packet, we have a couple of financing quotes, and it's my understanding that we will be just paying cash for these, so there will be, these financing options are not applicable to these.
That is correct.
Very well, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarity. Any further comments from the public? Did I miss anybody from the board? I have a motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Trustee Vosberg, to approve item 8F. Clerk Berry.
Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Item 8G.
Item 8G is to approve a recommendation by Facilities and Operations Department to award RFP number 2022-FO-59 janitorial service 3-year contract to Master Maintenance.
Do you have a motion to approve? Supervisor
Motion to-
Kersten will make a motion to approve,
Support.
support by Treasurer Elliott. Director Sonnenberg, please.
Yes, good evening once again. This janitorial process we've been talking about for years since I've started here. It was a new process. We started with our last vendor, our current vendor, which was Aztec, who the owner is here, by the way, and I'd like to thank him for getting us through some tough times over the last couple of years. They did a fantastic job. Really appreciate all the hard work during COVID, and I think he spent the night at our DPW building last night stripping and waxing the floors. So we would like to thank you for your service here in the township. And this contract's really about a partnership moving forward and past partnerships. So during this process, we went out to bid. We had 7 qualified bidders submit bids. There was a range, obviously, like there always is in janitorial, from some high, and then there was a kind of a range in the middle. We selected to interview 4 companies, and out of those 4, we ended up with Master Maintenance for lots of reasons. One, in the interview process, they were the only company that brought in existing staff that were immediately ready, current employees to staff our building, move in, clean tomorrow. They're already employed by the company. Every other company we interviewed had planned to hire new people. The least expensive vendor was based in southern Michigan, and they covered southern Michigan and northern Ohio. So it really didn't fit into our mix, and they didn't have staff locally. So there was a whole host of reasons. In fact, one of our vendors had said to us, "You guys really run a pretty stringent, interview process. We've done a lot of municipalities, but we never went through an interview." So we did do our homework, our due diligence, and try to kind of go through each vendor and find one that fits the best. And that's why we're happy to introduce Brooke Price from Master Maintenance, who's here today. If you have any questions for her, she'll be available. But to break this contract down, if you look at the numbers, and we're just going to kind of go, let's take a year at the municipal office, for example. Currently, in our current contract, we're paying about $70,764. The new contract would be $56,760. So there is a savings moving forward, but we're increasing the scope in other areas, so it's kind of a balance. But you can look at these numbers and they're pretty big, but when you break them down into smaller sizes, like for example, if you take our janitorial fee, if you take that monthly fee, which comes out to be, with our new contract, $4,730, and you break that to about 22 days, it works out to be about $215 a day to have somebody clean our building. Now I know I'm going through a lot of numbers, but if we were to hire a full-time employee, we'd be looking at an annual cost about $77,000 a year for one employee. And I think if you had one employee here during the day, it's going to take a little bit more than one employee to keep this building clean, especially with all the moving parts during the day. So it is nice to get the janitorial service in here at night, like we have been doing, and getting this building clean and scrubbed at night when no one's around makes it a lot more efficient. So I am grateful for our past vendor and excited about our new one, and I think this service has really done well for us, and I'm looking forward to any questions you might have about this proposal.
Thanks, sir. Any comments from the board? Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, I just have a quick one. The packet is very extensive, and it really did. There was a lot of work done to request the bids, and the scope and the expectations were really laid out very, very well. So there was a lot of work on our end and your team before it was even sent out. So I know that this has been something that you've been paying very close attention to. And I would just like to say thanks to the team at Aztec. They've really done a great job, and they came in and helped us out when we were really in a difficult spot. So thank you, sir, for the work that you've done here, and welcome to the new team. So I appreciate the packet. It's very, very informative, and you broke it down extremely well in detail. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Comments from the public?
John Speaka, 53978 Connor Drive. Just a couple questions that I have that I didn't see in the packet is, I've been a huge critic of Aztec since we've brought them on. I think you guys all know that every 2 weeks. The exorbitant fees that we're paying between the municipal building and the DPW have been just enormous. I didn't see in there with this new company, I didn't see who is paying for the cleaning supplies, because with Aztec, the taxpayers were picking up the costs for the cleaning supplies. And in there, do they, does the new vendor use subcontractors? Because that's another concern of mine with important documentations that we have in the building here. I'd like to actually see somebody on a permanent base stationed here that's not a subcontractor come in and clean this building and the DPW. And I'm going to disagree with Josh. I've said this several times that if we put 2 employees in here at $15 an hour on a part-time base, we could save a lot more money. So I think I've been pretty clear on that. So I'm going to disagree that going to an outside vendor is the best choice for us. I mean, we used to have one cleaning lady in here that did a phenomenal job, and we never had an issue till Josh came on, and now, I mean, we're subcontracting everything out. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? Bring it back up to the board. Trustee Joseph, please go.
Yeah, I just, you know, again, I don't mind criticism, I really don't, and I think, you know, any comments or questions that are asked, you got to take a look at the fact that this was a 250-page or so packet, and I'm not pretending I read it cover to cover, but I knew easily where to go on your questions. And if you look at page 331 of our packet, you'll see that the vendor lists how they recruit their employees, how they train their employees, how the management team is part of the process, that all employees are drug tested and background checks, that a picture is taken for photo ID badges. And then on page 335, they list the new the document is, the page is called training, and new employees are trained in cleaning solutions and equipment use, and floor maintenance, and basic material separation methods. It goes on and on and on, including the follow-up training for disaster, emergencies, VIP areas, proper care of the township equipment and the equipment from master maintenance. And then they have a whole section on the types of cleaning products that they use. They talk about green cleaning, and they're a very green company, and they have a very detailed page about the types of chemicals in cleaning products and how they destroy everything in their path, and that's not necessarily a good thing. So their company philosophy focuses on green products. So there's a lot of information that you can, you know, take a look at that would keep you from being embarrassed when you go to the podium. And then secondly, Aztec isn't really deserving of criticism. And there was no way that one person, and I many times walked out with Carol, and I was astounded at how many hours she put into this place, and always left feeling like she shouldn't leave, that there was more she needed to do. And I remember being here quite late, and was actually concerned for her because she was taking trash out, and I mean, we're at a safe community, but all the same, she was by herself, and it just wasn't a very safe. You know, the building was still open. Many times I'd come in on my way home from work and, you know, come into the building and she's back vacuuming or something, and I terrify her because that's not a good system for a community our size. And you're never going to get 2 people at $15 an hour to come in and do the job, one that Aztec has done, and I'm confident in our new provider. So let's at least be fair with what we're talking about when we lay out the cost of the job, because the RFB was very, very detailed all the way down to what, where, and when gets cleaned. And so the price is very reasonable. I'm not in that business, but from what I can see, master maintenance was in a bidding process with a lot of very, very professional companies. and they came out on top for a reason. So let's try to get to some good place. I'm not a big synergy guy, but this has potential, and I'd like to see something that we agree on in a positive way. You know, having a clean building with qualified, bonded people who are drug and criminal background free with green cleaning products seems like a good place to be. So let's at least celebrate something that we can, you know, agree on. But I'm proud of the process that brought this vendor to us, and thank you.
You probably didn't even know her name, wouldn't recognize her, she walked in. Clerk Barry. Clerk Barry.
Josh, the three areas that we are contracting for maintenance on, the municipal office, Department of Public Works, Community Center, you probably know this, but I'm just going to ask for a ballpark figure. How much square footage are we talking about here? Ballpark, because I...
35, 27, sorry. I'd have to look at the map to add up the DPW, because it's not the entire building. So I know the entire square footage, but the cleaning services don't always encompass the whole building if it's storage or whatnot.
Probably 80% of it, say.
Do you know I'm sorry, I'm referring to Mike. I can get it back to you. So see, our new partner is already answering questions for me. How much? For the DPW? Because in total, I know here, we're 35 here, 20, I'm sorry, I'm usually prepared, I can't believe.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, even at that, and I think it's probably more than that, you're looking at about 66 cents a square foot. We can't, there's no way we could employ staff for that kind of a rate, even for that amount, for even one facility. So I think that their price is very reasonable on a monthly basis for the amount of square footage that they are going to be responsible for. And then as far as the sensitive nature of what we have here, obviously, election equipment and everything that goes on at election time is of the highest level of security that's required. I think pretty much anything here, other than probably the cash in the vault that the treasurer is responsible for. Outside of that, I don't think there's anything more sensitive, and I'm very comfortable with what this vendor has provided for security measures in their submission. I'll be supporting the item. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing no further comments, thank you, Aztec. Did a great job. And thank you, Josh Sonnenberg. I have a motion by Supervisor Kersten, supported by Treasurer Elliott, to approve item 8I. Clerk Barry?
Supervisor Kersten.
I'm sorry, 8G, I'm sorry, 8G.
The janitorial service 3-year contract. Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph. Aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
Item 8H.
Item 8H is to approve a recommendation by Public Services to award the construction of the 2022 sanitary sewer rehabilitation by Open Cut Repairs, RFP number 2022-DPW-62, to the lowest responsible bidder, Strata Underground LLC, for the bid amount of $173,290.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Clerk Barry, supported by Supervisor Kersten. Director O'Connor, if you would, please.
Good evening. This project is for point repairs or spot repairs on the existing sewers that have been TV'd and determined that they need to be repaired. They're in the process of failure. I'm available for any questions.
I know there was a specific question about locations and the map. Can you reflect?
Yeah, the map shows, again, all these sewers were TV'd during the 2017 SAW program. So over the years, we've been making these point repairs and spot repairs. This is the last group of sewer points that need to be repaired based on that study.
Thank you, sir. Any comments from the board? Comments from the board? Comments from the public? Sir, you're going to have to go to the podium. And you can direct your question to the chair, and we'll see if we can answer it.
What can we tell on that map? What sewers are you talking about? Looking at that map, I don't see anything on there that I could, look at. What area on that map or what sewers?
If you want to get a list of the bid documents and locations, I believe they were in the packet.
Pardon me?
They were in the council packet, so you
I
can look
I
at
didn't
them
even
with
look at
those
the packet. I'm
locations.
just looking at this.
The map was simply put up there to demonstrate where they are at.
Well, where are
If you
they?
want to know specifics, you can look at the bid packet.
No, I didn't.
I can't help you then. The screen's
That's
just a
cooperation
demonstration.
we usually get.
Well,
What
your
I'm concerned
question's
about
rather vague.
is the extension that basically Candace Miller wants to sell back to us
That has
included in
nothing to
that.
do with this request.
It's not included in this.
This is not included in this request.
Thank you.
That will be coming in a future meeting in January, just for your information. Further comments from the public?
John Speaka, 53978 Connor Drive. I think when Mr. Kadich came up here, he was asking for the specifics, and to respond that they're in the packet, to me, is inappropriate, because as the supervisor and acting supervisor, you should be able to tell him exactly what sewers. You shouldn't tell him that he'd have to refer to the agenda packet. So not everybody has access to the internet. Not everybody has access to the agenda packet. So when a question is posed, instead of trying to be condescending, answer the question. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? Bring it back up to the board. Have a supervisor, or, I'm sorry, Clerk Barry. Have a motion by Clerk Barry, supported by Supervisor Kersten, to approve item 8H. Clerk Barry.
Clerk Barry, aye. Supervisor Kersten.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Elliott.
Aye.
Thank you, Mitch. Item 9, public hearings, there are none. Item 10, addendums, there are none. Item 11, public comments. There's a 5-minute time limit on the public comments, and if you would state your name for the record, and the clock will begin when you speak. Comments from the public.
Joe Kadich, live at 32825 Sutton. A couple of things I wanted to talk about tonight. The first one was basically what happened at the last meeting when Mr. Wharton came up here after, I don't know how many years he's been going to these things, being frustrated enough because of the interaction between the board and the commoners and the board itself, basically telling you people to grow up and act like adults. And if you really want to solve the problem as to what happens and what brought that on, it's almost the same interaction that you and I just had over the sewers. Somehow or another, you've got to be able to let people talk. You may not like it, as Trustee Joseph said, but you'd have to make them talk. And instead of waiting, like at the comment section, till everybody that's commented comes on, and then form your answers and tell somebody, because at that point, whatever you said may not be the right thing. You may have crafted your answers to break it so it's not even addressing the problem. There may even be some untruths in it. And it's frustrating to come up here, put your time in, say something, and then 10 minutes later have it not even addressed or somehow shuffled to the side. If you want to do some repairs and actually think of how you can improve your actions there, take a look at that. Even now, if you disagree with what I'm saying, say something now. Basically, what you should have done when Mike got up here and said that, is instead of letting him sit down, saying, explain to me why you've got a problem and what the problem is and how we can change that. That didn't happen. The other thing I wanted to talk about was when I came in to get the bid list, or not the bid list, but the budget for '23, Treasurer Elliott came out and talked to me, asked me what I had against Selfridge because of what's going on there and what I've been talking about and other people have been talking about, the problems that'll cause this township. Number one, with the noise from the airplanes, I think it's been demonstrated. Anybody looks at the, basically the sustainability study or the other study, you'll see in there, well, they're even telling you how much noise they're gonna create. They're telling you in the back of it how much more air pollution they're creating. Nobody's relating this to the public, and you won't put on their environmental study onto the set white. You won't invite anybody for a public hearing. All this goes by, and you ignore it. People should be, allowed to know what's going on. You should at least bring them in here and expose them to it. The other thing in there that really got me out was because we were talking, and I told Kathy Elliott about the fact that the PFAS that's coming out of there. I've been attached with Eagle as to the person that's monitoring that, so I know what's going on out there and how much PFAS gets out into the thing. And all Kathy Elliott was saying, well, what about the jobs? Nobody's promising any other jobs if they get in there. And it's to service, help Lockheed Martin sell F-35s to foreign governments and train their pilots here. We get nothing out of that, absolutely nothing, except all the aggravation and the loss of quality of life here. About time you people got off and said, hey, let's have a town meeting and bring this to a head and let people know, not you decide that it's okay for them to come in here without any rebuttal from us. Now, as far as the PFAS, that comes back to the comment I made that you take issue with, that we didn't have a problem when they lost the line going to out of Port Huron for the water department. What would happen then is all the water going out to all the communities came from the Detroit River. Now, 2 years ago, they studied all of the fish in the lake from Port Huron, outside of Selfridge, and Lake Huron for PFAS.
Thank you, sir. Time's up.
Anybody care to ask if?
Any further comments from the public? Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Oh, great, thank you.
And then shut it off when you're done.
All right, great, thank you very much. My name is Mike Rayner, 26175 Jack Grove Lane. Some of you may know me as Mike the Bus Stop Guy. I actually had a few comments and questions about the bus stops in the area, but, well, I'm sorry. But Supervisor Kersten was kind enough to address most of those, so we can skip those. Except to kind of summarize that my issues with the bus service here are two. Number one, I have discovered that many of the businesses that we have here that need employees are not able to obtain them because we don't have bus service to their locations. So primarily 23 Mile Road from New Baltimore, and we really need it all the way to Van Dyke, which I know is beyond your scope of responsibility there. And the other is the shelters. And so I would like to pass a couple of pictures. Some of you have seen my shelters. They're somewhat controversial. They're meant to be, and they certainly have been, attention getters, mainly trying to make it clear that, especially with winter coming, and especially like Thursday and Friday, to be standing at a bus stop with no protection, I think is basically inhumane. Of course, we can't have one at every stop, but we can do the necessary research and find out which stops really do require protection because of the number of riders that we have there. The reason I got into the bus stops, and this is really what I want to cover right now, is I was the only volunteer when Jillian's Coney Island requested some help to clean up 23 Mile Road. And I believe Paige, the manager there, told me that 130 people responded with, oh yeah, it's a great idea, it looks terrible, yeah, let's do it. But I was the only volunteer. So it was interesting when I went over there and started cleaning it up with Paige and 4 of her employees, the 6 of us, and with the assistance of a township person and a landscape company. It was very clear how terrible it looked, but in reading the comments, a lot of people said, oh yeah, those bus stops look awful, this place is looking so trashy, you know, we've got to do something about this place looks awful. And so anyway, I went over and I looked at the bus stops, and I have some ideas on that I won't go into. But at the same time, including where I put some of the shelters, yeah, we look pretty bad out there, not just on 23 Mile Road. We look pretty bad in quite a few areas. And I took a few pictures coming in today. The first one happens to be Cotton, right on the corner of Cotton and Gratiot, which I took as I came up to the meeting this evening. And I'd like to circulate those. And I have a couple more where one of my shelters is, thank you, and in an adjacent area, and the difference is quite noticeable. So anyway, as I drive around Gratiot and kind of look around, I mean, there's like trash all over the place. So my concern and hope is, and perhaps you can help me with this, I think there should be some sense of responsibility with the businesses to clean up the common area in front of their business. I mean, much of this area is really kind of an extension of their business. Now, I was a retail manager for years, and I always made sure that I cleaned up everything that was in my immediate area. And so as you ride up and down Gratiot and look around, I mean, this stuff is really in front of a place of business. So I wonder if we shouldn't really perhaps solicit some community participation by the business community to maybe help our appearance better. But then there are areas like Cotton there, which is one of those no man's land again, where nobody's really exactly responsible for it. So we kind of need to clean up there just as we did on 23. So anyway, I think we really need to do some housekeeping. And I really think that we as citizens and as business owners need to really be responsible for doing that. So that's my hope. And again, the shelters, the pictures as I pass them, by the way, they've been condemned today. They were condemned today. The one looks ridiculous because I had to quickly repair it because it blew over and was destroyed. So anyway, Supervisor Kersten was very encouraging because you folks have been talking to Smart Bus, and I think we have new leadership in that whole transportation area, and I'm encouraged that things will get better.
Thank you, sir. Time's
but,
up.
The overall complaints from the folks.
We'll look. Time's up. I'll address it at the end of the meeting. Thank you. I'll share some of that, closing comments. Any further comments from the public?
John Spica, 53978 Connor Drive. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Buon Natale and Buon Feliciano to all the residents in Chesterfield. Let me let me tell you what's embarrassing. When you have a budget that we just approved a week ago, where the general fund's running in the negative $1,000,006, public safety is $277,000 deficit. Brandenburg's $572,000. Water and sewer is $873,000. We have a total of $3.3 million in deficits. That's embarrassing. So signing off on a budget like this is embarrassing. Mr. Joseph, you mentioned something at the last township meeting. I don't have anything. There's nothing personal against our acting. It's nothing personal against our acting supervisor. I like him. It's strictly business. I don't like the way he wastes our township money. I mean, it's that plain and simple. There were a lot of inaccurate comments made at the last township board meeting. A prime example of embarrassing is, we've got an individual that's been in this township over 6 years. A board member asked him how many square feet something is. I mean, you think it should come right off the top of his head. He just sent it out for bids. I mean, he couldn't even answer it after being in this township for 6 years. So that to me is embarrassing. Again, there's been 2 instances at this podium where 2 individuals have come up here that were hired by the supervisor, that one of them was the assistant director of the water department. You had no clue. The other incident was tonight with this change with Josh being the director of leisure services and F&O. But in the budget, I know you looked in the budget. If you looked in the budget, you would have seen in the budget that we're paying him for both jobs, and I brought that up at the last board meeting, so there's nothing new there. This is an example of, hiring people. We need to go back to how it was before. We need to bring the individuals before the board, and the majority of the board needs to do the hiring. That procedure got changed under the former supervisor, but we need to bring that back. Because the board should have control of the people getting hired in this township, and it just shouldn't be the supervisor and one other elected official signing off with that. That's nonsense, because, again, the direct result of that is we're getting good people pushed out of here. For example, we've got 2 individuals at the water department, a friend of Kathy Elliott's and a friend of Kathy Vosberg's that have 2 positions where 2 other people got pushed out. I mean, it just continues and continues. So we need to, as a board, we need to get a hold of this, and the board needs to make the decisions. We need to go back to deciding who gets hired and who doesn't. And we got to stop with these yes people getting hired. So we want qualified individuals holding these positions. Again, I've argued that the director of water and sewer is not qualified. He doesn't have an S1 license, and he's not qualified to do that job. I went back and looked at my notes, and when that position came up, I mean, Mr. Joseph voted against that, and Mr. Anderson voted against that, giving him that promotion. He's not qualified to be in that spot. Being a yes man does not qualify you to get a spot in this township. You need to hire qualified people to do the job. I brought it up last year, and I'm going to bring it up again. We've got a Christmas tree out there. That Christmas tree was donated by Lowe's. I want that sign out there that says that this tree was donated by Lowe's. That was part of the agreement for them to give us that $1,000 tree. So if you can put that sign out there, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? Any further comments from the public? Bring it back up to the board. Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. I know I'm going back on an agenda item that was already passed, specifically the sewer rehabilitation item. That was like 240 pages. I was, my layman history major background, reading a engineering degree of 240 pages. And I did have the same questions Mr. Kadich brought. Where was this location? I did call Mr. O'Connor. I was assured that these are rehabs of existing sewers, not part of the lovely other sewer system that we've referred to over the past 7 years. I think it'd be fair to call it the LaFada line, if the township ever gets it, to define irony. I asked him where it was at. He says there's maps in there, and I had to dig around. There are maps in there. It's Kutchenmeister. Besides what you saw up there, that is kind of hard to see. There are specific maps in the work that explain what was done. So I apologize for not mentioning that earlier during that discussion. I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's. If you celebrate an alternative holiday, that too. Be careful out there. Some inclement weather that's coming up. We're finally getting hit with winter. 2023 should be an interesting year within our township. So everyone be careful and have a great new year. Thank you.
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'd like to just start with the first speaker, Mr. Kadich. He has, I don't think you can take it away from him. He hasn't always agreed with me, but I've appreciated him being here. And we see things dramatically differently on an issue, maybe even guns most recently. And there was an agenda item that he was very upset with me about in my position, and we had the debate here, we had the debate there, and it never became disrespectful, in my opinion. I prefer the manner of addressing the public that you've laid out, although I do see where it can become problematic. So I like to answer questions as they come up. The difficulty becomes, how do you keep control of that if there is, like, say, one of the meetings that we have where we get a tremendous amount of residents that come to the podium. And so the procedure is set. I'm in favor of more time. I'm in favor of every agenda item having input from the public, questions being posed to the board and answered in the board meeting. But that's not the, that's not the way this board operates under our board rules. There's 3 minutes per agenda item and 5 minutes to speak. It gets frustrating and difficult at times, but I'm glad that you're here. I'm always glad when you're here, even when you're in disagreement with me, because I think if our residents come to board meetings and they get engaged, we get better policies and better government. So the second part of your question having to do with a conversation that started with the treasurer regarding the budget, I don't know how you went from asking for the budget to why are you against Selfridge, but I know your position, and it's not that you are against Selfridge. I've talked to you about this. There are tremendous concerns with the quality of life for township residents involving this base. But what I've gathered, and I've talked to people who, I don't know of a local politician that didn't include their support of the F-35 in their campaign strategy. I don't know of one that didn't, because it is an unmitigated non-dispute. You wave the flag and you talk about patriotism, you're in political, that's a strong position. The difficulty is, I didn't lose any patriotism when I took an oath to represent the residents of the township. So as the northern perimeter of Selfridge Air National Guard encroaches on the township, and the south end of the township becomes the APZ, or the Alternative Problem Zone, affectionately referred to as the crash box, the people that were elected to represent the interest of Chesterfield have to stand up and say, what about the quality of life for Chesterfield residents? So the noise contours, the real estate values, the property values, the ability to attract developers on the south end of the township who are so diminished in terms of what they can build, not only by FAA guidelines in terms of height, but also light pollution. So, you know, everything that you can imagine in terms of difficulty to develop faces the developers on the south end of our township. You got a 200-acre parcel that's probably never going to be, well, not probably, it will never be what we had hoped and anticipated it would be because it's incompatible with base expectations. That's a fact. And then the other issue that you raised with PFAS, when you care enough to stop waving the flag and you say, okay, I can do both, what is the harm of PFAS? What kinds of concerns are there for PFAS? They're immense. This is what is referred to as a forever chemical. Recent studies suggest that you can't test the blood of any inhabitant of Earth without finding PFAS in the sample. Some of the studies that I've read said that the last human blood sample was drawn on World War II soldiers. That was the only sample that was found on Earth to not contain PFAS. And so it is a very prolific and dangerous chemical. And the problem with the base, in my opinion, is you can't track PFAS levels through Eagle. They are not there in its entirety. There are huge gaps in terms of what needs to be reported there. And I got involved with a number of PFAS organizations, and the reality is it's a very difficult task. When you start talking about, hey, what about cancer and dangerous chemicals being leached into groundwater and transmitted to, we happen to sit on one of the largest freshwater in this region, so there's immense problems. And then you go, well, what about the support of your country? And the sound of freedom is one of the comments that you hear a lot. But this isn't really the sound of freedom in this particular operation. This is the sound of a cash register because, as you pointed out, the F-35 at Selfridge, in this particular proposed base option, doesn't have anything to do with national security. It has to do with the sale of planes, jets, to foreign governments. So the Royal Air Force of Singapore will send over a team that will be here for, I don't know, 18 to 24 months, training on an aircraft that they purchased. So we are, in essence, the accurate dealer. We're not enhancing national security. We are utilizing this base as a sales hub for the aircraft. And so I think that should be considered too, because as you start to talk about money, I think it's fair for Chesterfield residents to be at the table and say, if there's $1 billion potentially pouring into the region, Macomb County and southeast Michigan from the F-35, since Chesterfield is the place that has to do the most sacrifice, what does Chesterfield get out of that $1 billion? We just heard a guy at the podium for 5 minutes say we can't even get decent bus stops. Why wouldn't a $1 billion or, you know, the numbers are just unbelievable what they say that this brings to the region. Why don't we have somebody having a serious conversation about why we can't have a decent bus stop? Or a road that doesn't look like a third world nation that has been bombed out by an F-35 so that people are losing their fillings and wheel bearings going down. There seems to be a disconnect there from all of this money that pours into the region. But Mr. Kadich, you're going to be hard-pressed to find a politician that doesn't greet you with open arms and a flag and tell you that everything is just going to be, you know, it's milk and honey. And as you are unable to hear your family and, you know, the smell of jet fuel and the sound of freedom is going over your head and you're at a barbecue with your family and it looks like everyone's in a silent movie because nobody can hear anything, that you do have a right to say, what are the environmental impacts of that base mission and what are the financial ramifications for the township's ability to generate revenue by way of development? So it's a very difficult question, and I'm glad that you continue to ask it. sorry I went a little bit long there, but I felt you were deserving of some answers. Mr. Rayner, I appreciate and have enjoyed your commentary on Facebook, and let me just say, first of all, I appreciate your diplomacy. I too know when we had when we had carts that were being abandoned and we were contemplating a township ordinance that was later adopted. I got tired of hearing and listening, and so on a Sunday I decided to go out and gather up carts up and down Gratiot, and I put them in my small box Ram pickup bed, and it took me all of about 3 hours to get about 3 dozen carts back to the stores that they belonged in. And when I posted a picture of it on Facebook, I got a lot of the same things that you got, which is, well, why don't the bums who leave the carts, and it made me angry because these are individuals that lack transportation, and you could see that somebody who doesn't have a vehicle and is literally pushing a shopping cart, that's not their preferred method of transportation. And when they pushed that cart, and I told the story, I was out on a particular Sunday, and there was a man waiting for the bus stop, and I was out on my mission of, just doing a good deed. And the guy who had nothing to do with my, endeavor offered to help me load the carts. And I said, no, don't worry about it. I loaded the carts, and I took one batch back, and I came back. He was still waiting for the bus, like 45 minutes later. And the bus came, and he got on the bus, and then he got off the bus. And he sat down at the bus stop, the only smart bus stop that has the shelter in front of the Wendy's. And he started sobbing. And I went over and asked him what was the problem, and he said his bus pass had expired and he couldn't ride, and he had no money. And I said, have you reach into my pocket and give him a couple dollars for bus fare? I said, have you eaten? He said, I haven't eaten in 3 days. So I had to go back in my truck and get my wallet, and I gave him some money to go and eat. I said, it's going to be a while for the next bus. It's a Sunday schedule. But I went home and I thought, I'm not fun to be around if I miss breakfast. And this guy hadn't eaten in 3 days, and he was offering to help a perfect stranger clean up a mess that had nothing to do with him, and he had no money in his pocket. So I share that with you to say to you, God bless you. And I appreciate all the good work that you do. And don't be dissuaded, and I can tell that you're not when you see those comments on Facebook and you respond by saying, thank you for your opinion, and we all have different opinions. I do, with that said, I do worry about you individually because good guys seem to take it, like on the chin more often than not. And I listen to you say, one of my shelters, and I see you out there, and I see you working on them. And I've actually had this conversation with the supervisor. I'm worried because one day I was driving home, I came up Gratiot, and one of your shelters had blown up against a utility pole, and it was kind of on its side. And I pulled over, and I just kind of drug it back, and I tried to leverage it as best I could. But I'll be honest, I was a little bit afraid of touching it for fear that somebody would say, oh, there was the trustee out there that had installed it, because I'm terrified that one of those shelters is going to blow, and then you're going to have it potentially into traffic. And I know that when SMART comes out and designs those shelters, they do it with a way that provides protection from the elements for their riders, but also it's engineered in a way so that if it takes on a direct hit from a motorist, it crumbles in such a way that it doesn't create death and severe injury for the wayward motorist. So there's a lot that goes into those shelters, and I see nothing but just humanitarian effort and goodwill. But I worry about what is the long-term potential harm if we don't get a permanent shelter professionally constructed, because as I say, it's the nice guy that always gets left holding the bag. But I'd like to help you in any way that I can, and I know that the supervisor and I have talked about this many times, and he's exerting as much pressure on the bus company as possible. And I think because of your work, we're going to have a solution faster than we might have otherwise had. And it always takes somebody out there championing the cause, and you're it. So thank you. And then my last comments are for the last presenter. I don't want you to take issue with my word embarrassing. I know that was like a cornerstone word in your presentation back. You're right, there was nothing personal in terms of to you, and unlike the other criticism that you had in terms of like some people don't have, you know, internet access and so forth, I know that you do, and I know that you research these and you go through the bill run meticulously. So I was, and I apologize if I was unfairly critical of you, but this custodial packet, this janitorial service was very, very thorough. And the questions you ask, and I'm just was a little bit surprised, and again, I didn't mean to offend you by saying that you embarrassed yourself. That was probably a little bit harsh, but the information was available, it was contained in the packet, and it was pretty direct. I can't really answer most of your issues, and they're not mine. I do know that the specific question about square footage, I understood the clerk, because I can see she makes little scribble notes, and she was just doing the math of square foot versus, you know, cost of cleaning per square foot. It's a difficult question to answer in a ballpark way. I know what she wanted, but if you look at the request for bid, each building is carved out so that there is square footage sort of withheld. I don't know that you could make, she requested ballpark, but the answer was quite specific, and that the RFB had a number of carve-outs within each building that they just don't service. And so it was complicated, and I know he likes to give pretty precise answers. I'm not trying to be synergistic here, Mr. Speaker. I'm just saying I know Josh likes to be as specific as he can. He's not going to throw a number out when a board member asks for a specific number without making sure the number is solid. So I appreciate that instead of guessing. Because if he would have come back and said 10,000 square feet and he was firm, Mr. Anderson and I might have chewed him up 2 weeks later wondering why he said it that way. So he's right to make sure he's talking about specific numbers. The issue with the S1 license, I know you brought it up many times before. I have supervisory responsibilities over professionals that have advanced degrees, psychologists and psychiatrists. I do not possess their degrees yet. I supervise them. It's not necessary in every organization for somebody in an administrative or leadership position to hold the credentials for every service that is performed. That's not necessarily a requirement, and the head of the department is responsible for ensuring the safe drinking water of the residents. And they can do that by a multitude of ways. Directly analyzing the water, commensurate with their S1 license, or contracting with a state of Michigan approved S1 license holder. And in this instance, right when it was brought to my attention, I spoke to the supervisor and was assured that at no point in the difficult personnel issues at DPW, at no point were the residents left without somebody certifying the safety of their drinking water. And that was very clear from day one. So having addressed all of the presenters, I would just like to say to the residents and to my fellow board members and township employees, thank you for your service. And I hope everyone has a very Merry Christmas and a healthy, happy New Year. Thank you.
Trustee Rossberg.
Excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Thank you for previous speaker. Gave a lot of details that would address some of the questions that were answered. Hopefully that they just wanted the information and that takes care of the issue. If it's a political complaint, that probably won't help it, but you gave a lot of good information. Mr. Rayner, thank you for your work with the bus stops and cleaning up. I've been watching your posts and different activities that you do, and I really appreciate it. If thought it's occurred to me many times, if we would just all take care of our own little piece of the world that we cross through every day, it would be a nice, clean, healthy place to live, wouldn't it? But thank you very much. And there's some questions about agenda items. The full agenda is available to everyone when you go to the website, or if you look at the window on the building, all you see is the cover pages of the agenda, but all of the backup information is available. If you have access to a computer, you can go to the township website, access the agenda, and there's hotspots on the agenda where you can click on it, and you can see all that information. If you don't have access to a computer, you can go to the library, and I know they would be thrilled to show you how to use that. So one of the things that sometimes it's frustrating sitting I'll speak for myself only. When people ask questions, detailed questions about the agenda, and we've reviewed hundreds of pages, it would be nice if people had questions about, after having read it, and then ask questions, because there's many times I read the agenda, I still have questions and I have to make phone calls. So I would encourage everyone to do that. Regarding PFAS, I was told, PFAS is a dangerous chemical. We don't want it. I totally agree with all of that. But I was told by someone at Selfridge that there is no new PFAS being introduced into the ground at Selfridge. It is only used for the chemicals when there actually is that foam chemical, if there actually is an emergency incident. So we can explore that some more, but there's not more new PFAS being introduced. And then another, my last thing regarding comments that were made, whatever the operation becomes at Selfridge, whether it stays what it is now, whether it closes, whether 2 or 3 more missions are added, this board will never be asked to vote on that. It's not our decision. We are a neighbor to that, but it is not our decision. So this is a public place. We can all help vent our frustrations over some of the issues, but this board, please understand, this board can't change anything. We don't have that ability to vote on any of that. And I would like to conclude with same thing, Happy New Year and Merry Christmas to everyone.
Treasurer Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I want to thank Mr. Rainier. Thank you very much for doing the cleanup. I've done some of those same areas, and they're a lot of work. And I think that was during the summer too. So you run into the heat and ticks sometimes and stuff like that. So I do appreciate the work that you've done on that. It's very important. And and if there's anything, if you do hear of other cleanups here at the township that we're able to maybe get the word out, or sometimes I'm always, if available, willing to bring my kids and family out and help as well. But the day that Jillian's asked that request, I couldn't, unfortunately. So I'm glad that you were there. Thank you so much. And to Mr. Kadich, I engaged you because you continually asked to be engaged about your interest in the PFAS, in the noise and things like that. And so this is not really, as you've pointed out, an area where you have a conversation. So I thought it was a great opportunity as I saw you, as I waved to you, I came out to there and I said, how are you? And this would be a great opportunity to engage and have some dialogue and conversation. And I'm grateful for that. And I'm grateful for that conversation. And thank you for your comments tonight. They were very clear. I think that was some of the clearest, when you spoke today, that was the clearest way for you that you've ever explained your position and the things that you're concerned about. They're very clear. I took my notes. As I've said to you before at the last meeting, please, if there's something that you want to share with me or information, I'm more than open to that. And I will look into things. As Trustee Vosberg has pointed out, we are definitely not the experts on things that are happening at Selfridge. All of the things that you're concerned about are important to the residents here, and so are their jobs. Yes, and I did say that, and that is true. There are a lot of people who have jobs that are local, that are tied to Selfridge, and that's a very important piece of the puzzle. And those are conversations that this board, every member of this board, has had with various people, and continuing. Selfridge needs a mission, and that's an important piece of our community. It has been long before I was here or anybody else in this audience. And I think most of the people in this area, I do say the sound of freedom. I live in the flight path. I live in the flight zone. And so for me, it's very normal to stop talking on the phone and, you know, for airplane to go over. My kids absolutely love it. It's inspired. I have a daughter who was inspired by that to become an engineer. So different people, different experiences, and you know, that's a part of the way the world is. Anyhow, with that, I think it's been a great board meeting. It's been a great year. I want to thank everybody who has donated time and to the township, the functioning. I want to thank the employees, and I want to thank this board and the residents for the things that they contribute to this community, and lots to be grateful. So I hope that everyone is safe over the holiday vacation and has a happy new year, and see you then. Thank you.
Clerk Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. First and foremost, would like to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, both my colleagues as well as all of our residents and everyone watching and listening to us. A couple of pieces of business. First off is that if there's ever a question on the agenda packet or what is in it and you don't have access to that online, first off, Trustee Vosberg's completely correct. There are digital links, as well as everything in the board packet is available online and digitized for you, but there's also a hard copy that is always available here at the board meeting, as well as published in the clerk's office at the time the agenda is published. So should you need to see something hard copy, that is always available as is required by us. Secondly, we do have some potentially rough weather coming. Everyone is hearing about it all over the news stations. In the event that there is ever a weather emergency or the township needs to communicate something with that regard to the residents, you can sign up for notifications on our website of that, and I know we also do utilize the township website should the supervisor need to call a weather emergency or any other type of situation where you need to be notified. I highly recommend signing up for those notifications. It's a very valuable tool to use, and you can sign up for them based on what is important to you and what kind of notifications you'd like to receive. So that is available through the website. I encourage you to do that, and again, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We'll see you in 2023. Thank you.
Thank you. Just some quick closing comments. Mr. Kadich, you made a reference to Mr. Wharton's comments last weekend. My comments were not derogatory directed at him. I've known him and his family for many years. What I took exception to were his closing comments that I felt were directly derogatory towards this board. Mr. Kadich, I've met you when you had a speeding problem. I drove to your house, and that kicked off our relationship because you did not like the answer. I met with you when we went public safety. I met with you again, and you did not like the answer. The problem is when you're given the answers, you don't like them, and it goes back to it just a constant debate. So I try to give you the answers. I try to be upfront with you, and again, if you don't like the answers, I don't know what else to do for you. Your comments too, and you made it again, untruths in the budget. There's no untruths in the budget. The budget is what it is. Very proud of it. Took a lot of time to put together. The staff here put a lot of time and effort into it, and I'm very proud that it passed 7-0 by the board. I am very comfortable and confident with my conduct, particularly here as I'm learning this role. What I don't like is the personal attacks. You're right. Everyone's perception is their own reality. And if I can't change your perception, that's your reality, then there's no sense to have a conversation. Conversation and debate, I'm more than open to. And again, it goes back to not liking the answer that is provided to you by those in charge or those who have to make decisions. I've been at the base twice this week. And again, the comments that were made by the general here, the Selfridge Base is an alternative site for the embedded F-35 project. There is very little opportunity that that project will ever come here. But what that base is looking for is a mission, and they will continue to do that. And they make no secrets about that. I have invited the general back to our board to make a presentation. He has taken me up on that, and we will try and schedule that within the first quarter of this year. And again, he is willing to discuss any and all base plans and options. Again, Mr. Kadich, your comments about the Chesterfield interceptor, there will be a presentation in January from Candace Miller's office and the Drain Commissioner as to the status of that drainage pipe, which is a Chesterfield piece of property. Mr. Rayner, again, like all the comments of them here tonight, I have been following you also, and I commend you for your actions and your community service. I did reach out with Smart in just our brief conversation, just to bring everybody up to date. I did meet with new Smart management. Smart, like every other industry, is struggling. They have, I think it was over 108 open bus driving positions, along with other staffing positions, and they struggle just to maintain their routes along with the associated services that they provide. We had a great meeting here in the township with that leadership. Some of them you've been in contact with, and we do have a plan moving forward. There are concerns, as Trustee Joseph said, about the stability of the shelters that are in place. Your point has been made, it's understood, everyone hears you, and we will continue to work towards a permanent solution, including route redesign, as we discussed, that will help our community and along our businesses. So that was a great conversation that we had with Smart, and they are willing, they have ears and they're willing to talk. Again, the comments of embarrassing, I'm not embarrassed about anything, very confident, very comfortable with where we're at in regards to our budget. Very proud of the budget and the potential that it brings and allows our community to move forward and into the future. And you're right, it is strictly business. That's what we run here, strictly business. And it's a business that you apparently don't have a lot of history in and a lot of experience in, and we hire qualified people. And we will continue to hire qualified people based on their qualifications, not yes people. Maybe in your industry that's what you do, but we don't do that here. Our DPW and water department is functioning very fine. We will continue to make improvements there. And again, as has been stated several times here, when you come to the podium and you make comments, really, if you look through the documents of the agenda, which are online, and as the clerk said, are public and available to you, all documents provided are in there. And just for point of reference so the audience can see tonight, this is the agenda packet with all documents related to all items tonight. So it is encompassing. Yes, 600 plus pages. So it is encompassing. It does take time to study and know, and I would recommend that any resident that wants to do it, it is available to them at any level. One more comment about the qualifications of our water. We are in strict compliance with Great Lakes Water System in the state of Michigan. Those are the standards we follow. Those are the standards that we pump to our residents, and any mention of a S1 licensee within our organization is completely irrelevant and off topic. So with that being said, I wish everyone happy holidays to all employees, and please keep in mind public safety, police, fire, and dispatcher who are working through the holidays 24/7, and they're available to our residents should any need arise for this pending storm that is coming. With that, again, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion to adjourn at 9 o'clock. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting's adjourned.